Yep.
Live. Okay, we got it.
All right. I guess we'll go ahead and start with the introductions. My name is Amanda Kimball.
Carrie Peabody.
Jennifer Dodson.
Yeah.
Happy.
Kathy, here.
I'm Jessie Keller.
Great. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
good.
cool.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Fancy.
Up in the top left-hand corner, there's a little green screen with the arrow, and you
Yeah.
can share your screen that way, so it's kind of fun.
You're amazing.
I had fun trying to get this thing going this morning. All right, so it says, our first question is, what do you think it means that all people are entitled to their own opinions, but not their own facts?
That's good.
I think it's funny coming off of that vice presidential debate that we have this topic and that question specifically, because there are definitely opinions that political people try to pass off as fact often for their own
This is
purposes.
Perfect time to put that in us with the presidential debates and all that stuff. I think you're totally right.
Yeah.
Better.
It kind of reminded me of the little studio secret that was shared at the end, where everybody's saying, no, George Washington was the 26th president, but he knows the fact. But of course, he thinks that everybody else's opinions are now fact because he's been drawn into that, even though their opinions aren't fact. They're fact because of it.
Right.
I think that's probably very common, right?
Yeah.
I sometimes think that what I tell my kids is facts, even though it's my opinion. I sometimes have to reevaluate what I say. Poor children.
We lost our scribe. Just a sec.
Wait a minute.
There we go.
Sorry, you guys. I just have a million things going on in my life. This sister in my stake died.
Oh,
She had a baby and she died, and she has 6 kids and they have no money, and so people are bringing donations to my house. So somebody just knocked on my door saying sorry, how to answer the door.
wow.
Oh.
But I'm summarizing, so I felt bad that I had to run away really quick.
Okay.
You're good. You're doing something good for somebody and their
That's
family, so that's great. I guess we'll move to the second question. Says, why can statements that begin with I've heard, or you know, or they say be so dangerous when articulating your point?
Well, because you say I heard, it doesn't mean it's true.
They say is the one that always cracks me up. And I always call my mom on it. I'm like, who are they? Who's they? And she's like, oh, you know.
They say, and it's very vague. Who's they? Can you give me a fact, like the exact person, or and especially when you're trying to write an article, a research article, as we're doing. They say, or they've said, or something of that sort, or like we're talking about the vice presidential debate. It's the same thing. It's the facts. Give me the facts. My dad used to say, the facts, Jack. Back it up.
I totally agree. I think when somebody says something to me, you got to think, is it fact or fiction? And when we're doing the research paper, it's like Jones stated this, so at least we have some reference of who stated it. It makes more sense if I know who is a credible person or not. So I like the idea of knowing who says what.
Yeah.
Mythbusters is awesome for a lot of those things, by the way.
I think it's fine to say that they say, or as they say, if you're referencing like a cliche or a commonly used phrase, something like that. You know, like, you know what they say, many hands make light work. That is something where it's acceptable, but when you're trying to state fact or trying to persuade somebody of you know, of a fact, then that is, it's not an acceptable reference. They.
I like how you put that. That was good. Awesome. Alrighty, on to the next one. It says, so far we have learned the importance of having the doctrine in our hearts. Why do you think it is also important to have good science in our minds and mouths?
It's kind of like that scripture when you have to study it out in your mind, and then you ponder it, and you think about it, and then you pray about it. So everything has a logical order. You have to build on the foundation so that everything, all the pieces fit together.
Yeah, I you know, it's the whole thing about, I had written that the choice, having the choice to think about it, giving the choice and accountability, that's what I had written down for this. I'm so thankful for that opportunity. I'm accountable for my choices. And when I was watching the video from the UN, I was like, wow, you know, we're accountable for our choices. And this right here, I'm so thankful for the gospel and what we're given. Wow.
I feel like when this question brought, what it made me think of is that God is a God of laws. So he doesn't perform magic tricks. He doesn't just suddenly make something happen. Any miracle that occurs that God performs or that the Savior performs is through the laws of this world. They are bound by the laws of this world. And so science plays a huge role in religion as well as in our secular life. And they have to go hand in hand, especially when you're talking about miracles. They're not, and we may not understand the science behind many of the miracles, but I know that it's there. And I know that God just can't like willy-nilly decide to do something unless he is following the laws, the natural laws of this world.
The one thing I kind of thought of when it was, you know, saying how it's important to have good science in our minds and in our mouths, is many people are hired on for different types of jobs. And if they are sitting there running their mouth and talking about how we need to go and do, you know, this and this and this and this and that, or whatever for their job, but yet they don't have that science to back them up, or they're just kind of doing what they think is right, but they don't honestly know if what they're thinking for their job to be done is right, it's going to put a huge damper on the company that they work for. So if they don't have that good science to go and back them up, then whatever they're saying really probably shouldn't be said.
That's very true.
Well, isn't that important as advocates to have that when we're, you know, talking to people? Yes, we need to have the facts in our mind.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I can understand what she just said.
Kathy, would you mind repeating what you said?
Yeah, as when we're advocates, and I'm not sure if my mic is working.
You're better. It's better now.
Okay. I think when we're advocates, we can have the doctrine behind things, but we need to also like have it in our minds and our mouths, because it's not going to, you know, we're not going to be good advocates without that principle.
Right. That's a very good point. Okay, let's see what the next question is. Oh, these are video questions now. Woohoo! Okay, It says, if you were to pick a side on the Common Core debate, strictly based on the information from the evaluating research, which would you pick and why?
Oh, okay. So I have this big, long, so based upon the information that was presented, this is from my perspective, I'm completely against the Common Core. So I felt that the information presented tells me that those who developed the Common Core, they were not, well, okay. The ones that developed the Common Core, they had an agenda that was they were trying to develop a very good idea. The ones that were developing it. But when it came together and the politics behind it started going out, it really got screwed up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think what you're trying to say is they started off sincerely and with a true intent to make education better. But and I don't even think that it was the people that developed it and wrote it. I think it was that when politics got involved, they were like, we are pushing this through. They did it before there was any real testing done on it, when any real investigation done on it. Anything that they heard that was contrary to it being wonderful and great, they just brushed under the rug. And so it was pushed before it was ready, is what happened.
Right. And what really gave me the chills was, I live in the Great Northwest, where Bill Gates is almighty, the man, okay? And it really gave me the chills when he said, when the curriculum and standards are aligned. Those words, the whole thing about everything's supposed to be aligned and everything's supposed to be perfect and aligned, everybody to be right with the standards. It's because to me, it was specifically backed by these corporations and pushed through by politics. It was politically backed. It was politically pushed through, in my opinion. Okay, and Bill Gates was one of those philanthropists that pushed it through. It was a lot of his ideas that pushed it through. My opinion.
That was his money.
It was a lot of money. A lot of that, Bill Gates, Monica, or whatever her name is, they pushed it on through. They really wanted that.
The Common Core is kind of interesting. Sorry, are you talking or?
No, I was just going to say my favorite quote of the whole thing was when that little guy said, "They're not apples, they're people." They can't all be the same, but trying to make them the same. Yeah. Anyway, continue. Go ahead with what you were going to say.
Something I thought was interesting, at least that kind of hit home to me, is when one of the gentlemen said that 40% of the kids taking the standardized testing needed remediation in math.
Yeah.
And then we have to drop the content to match the needs, and then eventually till everybody fits into that lower category. So it's actually, we're lowering the standards because of trying to make everybody equal.
Yeah.
But it was interesting, he was saying this, but he did not back it up with facts, like as far as where he got the percentage from. He didn't, as far as following the outline that we learned, some of that information wasn't given, like the citations, where they got the statistics from. He just stated a fact as he knew it. So that kind of didn't match up.
I feel like it's really hard when you're doing a video to cite what your resources are. I feel like the credentials of the people speaking added weight to what they had to offer.
Right, they spoke for themselves.
It definitely had me emotionally.
Yeah.
I was totally on board.
Right. A lot of the, they spoke about dumbing down like the ACT and the SAT, and I can say I saw that as my children, because of the age differences in my children, because a 28-year-old and a 26-year-old, and then I dropped down, going down in the ages to the 21-year-old and the 20-year-old, you know, dropping down. So there's this age difference. So I saw from the difference in the tech, taking the ACT and the SAT from the older ones down to these younger ones, the dumbing down of the testing is unbelievable.
So
I'm in Texas, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, here in Texas, they have practice ACT as a junior, or SAT. They actually do PSAT, which is a practice SAT. And so they
My kids
practice
took that in
taking
8th
it.
grade. 7th
Yeah,
and 8th grade, they take it.
Yeah, well, they have a PSAT that's like the real thing, and it's graded and everything and sent in. And then they take the real thing like a couple months later in their junior year. And then they don't even take it as a senior. I mean, we didn't take those tests, SAT, until after I graduated from high school when I was a kid. So, you know, it's amazing how much standardized testing is a big deal.
Carrie, where did you grow up, Carrie?
I grew up in Oregon, but I live in Texas for the last 20 some odd years.
In California, we took it in the summertime, or, you know, we took the SAT, the PSAT. When I was growing up, we took it, you know, in the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
So in high school. So
all for equality. It's so sad. We're pushing. My high school kid, who's a junior, says he can take a test like all get out. He can take a test and pass it without studying because he knows how to take a test. He's been trained how to take a test.
And that's
kind of a sad thing.
That's
more
why
than the content.
He said that's what they're doing. They prepare everybody to take a test, but they don't prepare anybody to go to college. They don't prepare you to actually go anywhere else but to take a test. That's all it is. It's take your test, take your test, take your test. Not educate.
It was kind of funny when I was watching the video. My mom called up, and my mom is the 3rd grade teacher. She's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, watching a video about Common Core." And she goes, like, "Oh my gosh, I work with that every day," and all this stuff. She's like, "You know, the curriculum that we teach, I don't mind. We had to have a curriculum and standardized testing before all this Common Core stuff happened." But she says the worst part about the Common Core is the testing. And that when they test in the beginning of the year and when they test at the end of the year, the tests are completely different. And they don't measure what a child is learning. And it's gotten to the point where a lot of teachers, if they, because of that race to perfection or the race to whatever, to get the grant money and stuff like that for their schools, it's gotten to the point if the teachers do not teach their students how to take the tests, and basically the questions that are on that test, if they don't teach them how to go through and answer those correctly, they can actually get fired.
It's not testing. It's testing the teacher.
Yeah, it's testing the teachers on what the teachers say, "Oh, my students can do this." It's gotten to the point where a lot of the teachers will actually get the tests and go through the test questions throughout the year just to make sure that their students understand that question so that they can pass it. And she says it's really sad that that test is doing that to a lot of the school systems because they're no longer teaching the kids an education, a healthy education, and getting them ready for life. It's just getting them ready for this test. And yeah, they can learn certain things along the way from it, but it's not, teaching them what probably that student or particular person needs to learn.
Exactly what Melissa said. It's teaching them to be tested and not educated. And he's a smart guy. He's got Asperger's. He's very astute to what's going on in the educational system. I'm very impressed that he caught on so quickly.
So I work at a middle school in special education, And we have to actually, when a kid fails a standardized test, we have to prove that we have tutored so many hours or done our part, or we're sat down with the principal to discuss why that student didn't pass. The parent has nothing to do with that conversation, but it falls on the teacher. So it is a very stressful thing. And I can see why teachers do the practice test throughout the year. It's sad that they have to have it, but they have to also keep their jobs too. It's just, the whole thing is sad.
You know what I have a hard time with this is that I have severe learning disabilities, and I feel like every child learns the same, and that's not going to work when you're testing.
Exactly.
I mean, not everybody. I have a son that's got severe learning disabilities, and I had to have it put in his plan that he had to have the test read to him or he wouldn't understand it. The way they're doing the testing now, it eliminates just, I don't know what the word is, understanding that not every child learns the same. So you're kind of making a test, expecting everybody to be able to take that test, and not everybody can. So I don't think it's really
true. In special ed, we used to have 1 to 2 kids that we would help per classroom. Now we have 12 to 13 kids per classroom that we help with special ed kids in a regular classroom. And testing is we no longer do one-on-one testing anymore. We read to a group of 40 kids probably, and some of those kids need to be redirected. It's so tough. We're getting less funding.
And that kind of goes with that next question, Amanda. Amanda, if you scroll down into your next question.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
I'll go ahead and read it. It says, do you think that much of the Common Core curriculum ignores oh my goodness, I can't say it.
Developmentally.
Appropriate practices for children? Why or why not? I can't say it.
Definitely enhances the culture. I agree.
And it does, because like Kathy was just saying, it assumes that all the children develop and learn skills at the same rate and in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
In which they do not, because not all the children are the same. Some have learning disabilities. Some learn to read at extraordinarily early ages. Some learn to read at later ages. Some, it's just all different. Some comprehend.
My daughter, there's at her school, and we live in Texas, so it's not Common Core, but they still have their standardized testing, and they will shut down the whole school. Like, nobody is allowed to go in. No parents are allowed to go in. They're not allowed to speak at lunch. They're not allowed, like, the children are so, like, it is a prison for a solid week. My daughter is like a ricochet, so so they take her and put her in a separate room with which probably is not an awesome idea, but they put her in there with just her and just one teacher, and so that she can focus a little bit better on this test that she's taking, because she just is can't focus and refuses to focus. And so it's important enough to the school to get their funding, which I don't blame them. They need to get their funding. That one child's score is important enough to take her aside in order to boost her test scores. And then I have a son who just doesn't test well, and then I have a son that doesn't have to study and can pass anything you put in front of him. So those are 3 kids from the same home with the same genes that learn and test in 3 completely different ways. So I don't know how you take a school full of 600 children and try to funnel them all into this narrow trough and say you're all going to test this way, you're all going to learn this way. So, I mean, I feel like ultimately the biggest problem is that the federal government has gotten their hands way too into education. It needs to stay state level. It needs to stay local, and then it can be more personalized.
I totally agree with
You know
that.
what I-
Or they need to have a program with the funding to back up everything. That's the one thing they don't have is the money.
And we
They
have
just-
tons of money in
Well,
Texas.
no, not necessarily. They give
Well, in
incentives for
comparison.
schools, and not very many schools meet the funding criteria, especially with the new ones that they just laid out for the new testing for this coming year. It's kind of sad.
Where are you again in Texas?
Austin. They actually
Right.
have made it so that your kids, even with raises in the school, your kids have to reach, your school has to reach a certain point average, or the school teachers don't get their points. They get so many points for getting raises. It's the new district policy for us.
I was going to say, is that state or is it district?
Austin. It's totally Austin. So, and every school district's different, but
Right.
we're definitely equal to everybody.
It was interesting when he started saying that we have children in different areas of the United States, and different economics and different. I have a brother that teaches in New Jersey in college. He's a professor, and these are lower income kids that come from different kind of environment. And he talks to them sometimes. I look at him like he's crazy because they can't understand the words he's using. Everybody understands these tests, and they don't, because it depends on where you live and where what you were taught. So these standardized tests are not meeting everybody's needs.
Well, I thought a good point that he made too, outside of the testing, was that Common Core is trying to force all children into a professional career, medical, lawyer, legal, business. But there's lots. I mean, our country couldn't function if everybody was a doctor, a lawyer, or a businessman. We have to have mechanics. We have to have entrepreneurs that come up with their own idea. And college is not for everybody. It really isn't.
And that was part of the point that they were trying to make is, they're all trying to make them go to college, and not all of them need to go to college.
Did somebody say that Common Core is, so I felt like somebody said that they felt like Common Core has raised the dropout rate.
Yeah, they did say that.
So kids that would normally have graduated and not gone to college and gone on to technical careers or vo-tech careers are now dropping out of school.
And I can say I've seen that. I have seen that here locally. In our district, there have been many that have dropped out that would normally have gone to a vo-tech school. They've gone from our high school to well, they still call it a high school, but I call it, from my age group, a continuation school. And then they just cannot handle even the continuation, because they still use the Common Core in that continuation, even though it's supposed to be guided into more of a, not even a standardized, more, for that child, developed for the child. No, it's not. And they just can't handle it, and they just dropped.
It's definitely college prep. Middle school
It
is
is
definitely
still.
college prep. It's sad.
Because my son
It's
goes
not
to
equalized.
continuation school. Nathan goes to this because he had, he needed a smaller classroom, and he had dropped. And so he recognized it. Even at this Walker High School, the smaller school, it's still the same. And he sees these people dropping out because they can't handle it.
We have,
They could
in
go to
special ed,
yeah.
in special ed, we have a form that all kids have to fill out as they're moving on to high school. And one of that is the careers that they have to pick, that they want to. And they try to align their classes in high school. And it's sad, even our kids who can't speak or are paraplegic, we still have to fill out a career that they will do. And it's always a college-bound career. And your heart breaks because realistically, some of those goals can't be met. And instead of finding something that they can accomplish and feel good about it, they make them feel bad about something that they can't do. And I just wish there was some way to change this or do something about it.
It's okay to be a laborer. It's okay to build things. My next door neighbor, he's getting out of the army. He builds things. He builds desks and tables and shelves and all this stuff, and he's fantastically, wonderfully, gorgeous things that his lieutenants and stuff, they commission him to do these things. It's be proud that you can do this, because we need people who can do this. It is okay, you know, that you can work with your hands. And you know what? He's going to be a truck driver locally, but that's okay, you know, because we need them. And, you know, he graduated with a degree, bachelor's in music from Carnegie, but he was in the Army. Because, you know what? He can do anything with it.
Do you guys have you guys heard the quote from Mark Twain? He says, "Everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, he'll spend its whole life believing that he's stupid."
Yeah.
I feel like that's what Common Core is.
I think that's a good way of putting it for me. Just for time-wise, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next question.
Oh, yes.
It says, what have you learned from cultural imperialism? And oh my goodness, I can't talk today. I'm sorry. Imperialism about the persuasive function of research and science in creating cultural change.
I think that this is a smaller example of Satan's wishes, that us trying, or anybody else trying to force another culture to do what we think is best is not a good thing, and it's not always best. And in the example of the video that we watched about AIDS and AIDS prevention, clearly our ideas, our American ideas, or our American political ideas, are not what's best for the world, and especially these countries.
Well, it's not
forcing your will on somebody else is never a good thing.
And yeah, and it's not just America, though. It was also British, because I noticed that the British were in there too. But it is the Western ideals, period, on these countries, and it is, and I agree with you, Jesse, that it is Satan's way, and I had not realized how persuasive he could be in pushing his agenda and issuing ultimatums until watching this video. I was so, I mean, I've been reading, I read the book, all this information and everything, but when I actually saw this video and watched it, I talked to my mom about it. I talked to my husband and son while we were eating dinner. It's just amazing to me that I've been so naive.
Yeah, it was done the same way that Common Core was done. We're not going to give you money if you don't do what we want you to do.
Right, it's dangling that carrot, like she said, dangling that carrot. Here you go, here's your money, but you cannot have it unless you implement this, okay? So.
I thought the perfect example of that is when that Jamaican attorney, that female that was talking, she's talking about the sexual rights agenda, but she said it's scientifically unhealthy.
Yes.
Because of the AIDS epidemic. And that's like the perfect example, I thought, when she was stating that about the cultural imperialism. Mm-hmm. You know, on other people, and it's a powerful tool that people are using.
Well, one of the guys at the beginning, he said, I believe more in like sexual liberation. I am a liberal, but the facts don't back it up. Mm-hmm. It's not working.
Well, one thing I thought that was interesting about the video is the lady who was talking about how, you know, it's not moral, it's not right for them to push that type of, you know, sex education, basically AIDS prevention kind of stuff onto them. And then she had the proof to back it up with the monogamous marriages. And, you know, they already had those beliefs. And it's widely believed to, you know, you married one person and you stay with them for the rest of your life. And then all of a sudden they're getting pushed on this whole, no, you can be with the same sex partner. You can, you know, do this and do that. And it's okay. But she had the research to show and to prove that it's really not okay. I mean, it's actually very dangerous to live in a different way, like what they're saying to that it's okay for them to now live.
I love it when gospel principles are backed up by science.
Yes, and not only, and the example, the children with their parents that they'd lost to AIDS, that was very heart-rendering to me, very moving to show, and the facts, and they were just saying, look, you know, look at this, look at us, and look at what they're trying to push on teenagers, and it just blew me away.
Okay, I'm going to stop us there and move us on to the next question. We've got just one more question, and then the summary, and we're almost out of time. So the last one is, what lessons have you learned to make you more skillful in combating your chosen topic or threat?
Use credible sources and facts.
Yes.
Yeah, one thing that always got me was the question above with the whole the science to back up your mouth kind of thing. If you are wanting to say something about something, you better make sure you have that credible information behind you before you run your mouth.
No, it's just like, you know, when you talk about the gospel, you need to know what you're speaking about, or you're not credible. And it's the same thing speaking about any of this stuff. You need to know what you're talking about. It's not just your opinion. You have, you know, facts to back it up.
Right. Exactly. That's what, you know, what I've learned is my topic, my thread is kind of a difficult one to cover. So yeah. That's what I've learned.
All right. I guess unless
We introduce ourselves for the summary, or?
I
Yeah.
think it's at the end of it, isn't it?
Yeah,
Is this not the end?
After we do the summary, then we do our names.
Okay.
So this is going to be, I mean, this will be, and you know, so basically we spoke about in reference to our own opinions versus fact, that our opinions don't make something fact, and that we noted that the political season is a great example of people trying to make opinion fact, and it just isn't so. Saying things like "they say" is not a specific reference, and there needs to be credibility to that. And then we went on to talk about doctrine plus science, and it was said that there's a logical order to things, and that needs to be opinions and facts need to be built on real foundations. And we brought up choice and accountability, which I thought was a good gospel tie to this topic, that we make choices, especially when writing a research paper or relaying facts. We do have an accountability for the information that we're reporting or that we're giving. I spoke of God as a God of laws, and we said that we need to make decisions on scientific fact, and not. This one was kind of hard to articulate because talking about having science in your mouth. So when they say science, I kind of think of just fact. You need to have fact. You need to have facts. You need to have references. You need credibility. You need to have all the things that make for a solid, I guess, the solid foundation to build your argument on. And then we talked about Common Core, and everybody loves Common Core in this group.
You're awesome. Yeah.
We talked a lot about the testing and trying to funnel people into all the same category, and government having their fingers in and trying to coerce school districts into using this testing and this curriculum in order to really what the government's looking for is to look good on paper so they can say America's competing with China, which I think is silly because it's not like China is honest in their reporting. But and we spoke about college isn't for everyone. All kids are not equal in their education, in their background, or in where they want to go. And then we spoke a little bit of the AIDS video that we watched and how, dangling carrots and trying to coerce people into doing things that you want them to do, and the imperialistic effect that trying to force other cultures and countries into doing what we want them to do is a negative thing. Did I miss anything that anybody wants to have added in there?
Sounds good.
Hopefully I'll be a little bit more articulate when I write it all down, but that was the gist of it.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, I'm Carrie Peabody.
I'm Amanda Kimball.
Jennifer Dye.
Kathy Fear.
I'm Jessie Keller.
Okay.
Is that everyone?